Here are some tips for photographing routine subjects that come up when covering the news. For anything with straight lines and architectural features such as buildings, choose either a formal composition with a flat, straight-on angle or a dynamic composition with depth. A formal composition must be precise and often uses symmetry with the shapes in the environment. A dynamic composition often makes use of leading lines, which typically converge and guide the viewer's eye through the composition. This is true for other subjects as well, such as galleries, tables, landscapes, and more. Other composition techniques you can use are repetition and patterns, since these are visually appealing and often present in architecture. For almost any subject, try getting closer. Close-up images bring out tactile details and work well at a small size, which is useful on social media and smartphones. When you have a wide scene or can't get close to your subject, try using the layers technique, which is sometimes described as foreground, middle ground, background. Position yourself with something near to you in the foreground, sometimes by crouching down, to add depth and sometimes include multiple layers of information as well. This is a very useful approach with signs and text, which are informational but rather blunt and obvious visual elements. A variation on layers is framing, or frame within a frame. Use windows and doorways or even objects and people to bring viewers' attention to the main subject of the image. When you're photographing events, meetings, or speakers at a podium, consider the principle of the decisive moment. This is from the tradition of street photography and means waiting for the moment when everything in the environment is at peak action or alignment. This applies to great moments of action, like in sports, but it's also useful when action is limited. At events and press conferences, this is why you'll hear a flurry of camera sounds when the speaker does something like gesture with their hand. All the photographers are waiting for a key moment of expression. When you need to photograph documents or objects, using a narrow depth of field can artistically isolate the key information or obscure a busy or sensitive background. Depth of field is controlled by the aperture of the camera lens, which is essentially the opening where light comes into the camera. The larger the aperture, the narrower the depth of field. You can sort of get this effect with a smartphone by using portrait mode. When you need to photograph people for portraits, always consider lighting and use depth behind your subject. Natural light through windows is often very flattering. People are accustomed to posing for photos, especially children. Sometimes you just have to take a few overly posed photos before your subject can relax and act more naturally.